and give me this privilege and honor to have some great men and women on my program week after week. And I sound like a scratch record every time I say the same thing, but it is no exemption tonight. As a matter of fact, I have a very, very special friend, minister, community advocate, relationship builder, Bishop Dr. Reford Mott, coming in from New York. And when I come back, I am going to be talking to the bishop about his story. And if you think you know him, hang in there. You're going to find out what the man's real story is. When I come back, I'm going to talk to the bishop. ORB Ministry presents Let's Talk with the Doc. Grace Without Borders podcast. A thought for you. Ask Pastor. And a whole lot more. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. All right. So here we are with Bishop Reford Mott. My friend is joining me here tonight in New York, and I'm excited to have him with me here on Let's Talk with the Doc. And I know you're still trying to figure it out, but we'll get it. We'll get it later on. We'll figure it out. Somewhere along the line, we'll figure out that share button. And somebody's listening, somebody's watching. You're gonna get to hit the share button. But I am glad to have you joining me tonight, Bishop. Welcome to Let's Talk with the Doc. It is my pleasure to have you. How are you?
Man, it's my pleasure to hang out with you, my friend. And as to the question, how am I? I'm good and getting better every day, my brother. God is taking care of me. So
getting better every day.
Getting better every day.
All right. So welcome to Let's Talk with the Doc. It is my pleasure to have you. And thanks to the friends for joining us, wherever you're joining us from. It is always my pleasure to have great men and women joining me. And as you go along, you'll find out how this man is involved in his community. But before we get to the community involvement, I like to probe with my friends what's their journey, what's their story, where they were born, what things are like, where they grow up. So give us a little bit about where this man is born. All right. Welcome to from St. Vincent. Blessings to Pastor Tony joining us from St. Vincent. I was just over there for the regional convention, and that was just a blessing. Good to have you. All right. Here we go. Tell me about Reford.
Where should we begin? Or where was I born?
Begin at the beginning point. Where were you born? What was it like in your neighborhood? Childhood, growing up, when you make a discovery of yourself. What's your story till you get to where you are?
I didn't even know what a neighborhood was until I came to New York. But I was, for those of you who don't know me, I was born in the island of Jamaica, and I was born in the parish of St. Anne. To narrow that down a little bit, I was born in a little place called the York District, Bensington Post Office.
Okay.
I lived in a very small community, a very close-knit community. I grew up walking to school, barefoot on unpaved roads, if you can believe that. So I'm a country boy.
Been there, done that, just FYI.
I'm a country boy. I used to milk cows and goats.
Oh, wow. All right.
Before going to school. So I don't know how much of my beginnings you want to know, but we can dig as deep as you want to.
Well, listen, just give me stories are fascinating and stories are inspiring. Because I don't know how many people know that Reford, the Dr. Bishop Mott used to milk cow and goat. So that's that's maybe some new things for some people hearing. So that's already we begin to open a new door to the story. So all right, go ahead and tell me more about the story. What was it like? The difficulties or the excitement about that childhood days, milking cow, the pressure going to school. I mean, most of us do things like that, in our childhood days. So go ahead and let's journey.
Well, I mean, when you're a kid, you never want to get out of bed in the morning. Worst of all, when you have to get up extra early to go walk through bushes to get to them goats to milk them.
You talk about drew water catching your foot and all
all of that, and barefoot at that. So
wow.
it seemed like a hardship then, but today we can look back at it and realize that those things went into making us who we were. We had to do that, come back, have breakfast, get ourselves ready, and then walk ourselves 3 miles to school.
Yeah, God.
With a bunch of other kids. But those, when I look back at it, those are some of the best years of my life, my friends, especially those walks to and from school and the things that would happen on the way to school. Some of the fondest memories I have is, how when we were kids, we always seemed to be hungry. Especially when we were coming home from school and you'd walk past somebody else's property and you'd see all of those ripe fruits.
Cane, orange, mango,
you name
whatever, you name it, right?
And they would stand there guarding the property, so you couldn't go over there and pick anything, and you would just have to figure out a way as a kid to make a distraction, and some would sneak around the back end, and somehow we through teamwork we learned how to eat, back in those days. But
and some people were really defensive of their property because they know that an invasion of school kids it's your whole crop gone.
Lord, have mercy, have mercy. So those are some of the fond memories I have: climbing people's trees, getting busted, getting caught, with fruit in your hand. We tie up our shirts at the bottom and fill it up with oranges and whatever fruit.
Oh, Lord have mercy. You know the story. You know the story.
If anyone here can relate, then, they can relate. But this is a little bit of my early years growing up in country. And like I said, some of the most precious memories, some of the most life-shaping things that I without shadow of a doubt has gone into shaping my personality and my character to where it is today, so grateful for it.
Okay, so what was it like in your community, the atmosphere in the community? By the way, how many siblings you have? What's the family dynamics? Where you fall in that group?
Siblings, well, I would have been the last. I grew up with my grandmom. My mom was always traveling and abroad, and so my grandmother was my mother. And that's a very common story if you grew up in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Grandmother, my mom was in Canada, and then she eventually, after many years, moved to the States. So I was always, and before that, she was in Kingston. She had a barber shop in Spanish Town Road, and I would spend summers with her. But I grew up with my grandmom, and the dynamic was I had 2 older cousins whose mom was in England, and so I was like the last of 3 kids to my grandmom, who played mom to all of us.
Wow.
So, yeah,
wow.
I was the most loved and most cherished, being the last of the.
So okay. So what was the treatment between you and your older siblings? Was there jealousy? Was there resentment? At
times, definitely, because my grandmother had a soft spot in her heart for me. And I tell you, my grandmother was not easy. She would beat the living tar out of you for any little thing. And, she would sometimes go easy on me. And that was always evident at times when everybody should have gotten a good licking, my grandmother would make me an exception and whip the other 2. And so for those times, it didn't happen always. I got my fair share of whippings, but for those times when she made me the exception, clearly it rankled the others, and I had to pay for it somehow. They'd pay me back somehow, but if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about.
So. Oh my goodness. All right, my friend, I'm just getting started talking to Bishop Dr. Reford Mott up here in New York, and I'm excited because that's my personal friend. And we're going to make a lot of discovery because we have worked together. We'll unfold some of that as we go along. We have worked together over the past few years, and so I'm excited to have him with me. All right, so you grow up, you go to school. What was school like for you until you break out of the school atmosphere? What was that like for you?
School. I mean, in school, I was very popular.
See your friend talking, popping up something there. That's your friend. That's my wife. So the older one must have been so mad. So
oh, they were. You can only imagine. My hey sister, Sister Beckford, how are you? Yeah, I'll tell you what. School was fun for me. I was kind of always like a teacher's pet. And
really?
Yeah. I used to somehow seem to find favor with people in high places, and I remembered always being like a favorite of my teacher. I was kind of a smart kid.
Okay.
And so that everyone loved me and stuff like that, except for the ones who hated me. And I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of friends in school. So my family, myself and my cousin, we were also good cricketers.
Okay.
We were well known and well respected everywhere because my cousin was really the great cricketer. I was just coming up behind him. But in country, those things mattered a lot, And so I was fortunate to be very popular in school, and I really didn't have a hard time. I have a memory in school that would never leave me. There was a guy, his name was Orville Francis. I don't know if he's alive today. He shouldn't be much older than me, but he was the guy that had a bicycle, and he would ride that bicycle for school, man. And at lunchtime, you'd give up your lunch money for a ride on that bicycle. But that's how I learned how to ride a bicycle, and that was the greatest thrill of my life. And I'll never forget that guy, And sometimes,
I just said that there were two brothers in my time going to school, and they came to school with two brand new bicycles, man.
Wow.
A big one and a small one. And the smaller guy gave me a ride up the bicycle, man. I was so happy to get the ride, but I could not turn the pedal. I get the pedal one way and I couldn't get it to come over.
You were too little, man.
I wasn't too little, but I wasn't aware of how to turn the pedal because the mechanics of that. So eventually I became a rider, but I was so happy to get the bicycle, but I was so disappointed I couldn't really ride it because I couldn't get the pedal turned over.
I recall that story because to this day I have a fascination for cycling and the sport of cycling, bicycles. I still to this day and it's because of that guy, I just will never forget it. I'm still an avid cyclist to this day.
Okay.
I just did 32 miles today, my friend.
What, really?
Yeah, I just put in my miles today.
You did 32 miles on your bicycle today?
Oh, that's nothing.
Oh, wow, man. You make me look like I'm not even trying, man. I got two bicycles and they're locked up in my shed.
You better get out there.
Wow. 32 miles. That's a lot of riding. Right. Where you going to cover 32 miles?
I mean, I can ride from here up to Westchester Airport and back. And go
really? Okay.
Yeah, I can get on a trail.
Wow.
I can get on a trail and ride to as far as Yorktown Heights or further.
That's up in my neighborhood, man. So when you're coming to Yorktown, tell me, I ride and meet you over there. So
all right, we'll meet at Starbucks.
Yeah, that's a good one. Just tell me when you're coming into Yorktown Heights. I'd rather meet you at Starbucks for sure.
My friend, that is one of my most therapeutic times when I'm out there on the trail. Me and Jesus, man, and enjoying the beauty of nature. I absolutely love it.
That's pretty cool. You see, that's why we talk to people on this program, because how many people know that, Mad, right? 32 miles on a bicycle today.
Oh, man. Lord, man.
Wow.
I have friends. I have another pastor friend. He rides a century every year. He rides 50 and then he works his way up to a century. And
what?
He does it every year. Oh, man, that is nothing.
Wow.
I just don't have the time. I would probably do it too if I had the time.
My goodness. All right, I'm excited about that. But all right, so thank you. So so now you're going to school. When did you when you do figure what you want to become, when did you figure what dawned on you say, okay, where's Reford want to go with his life as he
Well,
goes into school age, developing himself?
well, when I was back home as a kid, I really didn't have any clue about what I wanted to do with my life. I really didn't. It was really when I moved here as a teenager. My mom brought me here, and we settled in the Bronx. And the only thing I would tell you after being here for a few years, if you had asked me what I wanted to do with my life, and I could tell you without thinking, I would tell you I want to be an actor.
An actor.
That was something I always wanted to do with my life. I want to be an actor.
So did you have any acting experience growing up, or just fascination?
Just small productions, plays. People I knew that had background in theater would do small plays, Fiddler on the Roof, and different kinds of productions that they would do on their own. I would get small parts in those plays, and just to have a little venting or to see if I had the goods or whatever. And so that's the one thing that if you had asked me from then what I want to do, I would tell you without thinking, I want to be an actor. But I came to realize as I came to know the Lord and began, to learn more about, God's plan and God's purpose, and even how God shapes us and how he makes us, I began to learn that God gives you a particular temperament. And with that temperament, there's a number of things you can do to find fulfillment and to find an expression for what you feel inside. And so even though I did not pursue, and I'm grateful I didn't, and long before I became a pastor, I was on my way because I was, you probably don't know this about your friend, but I was one of the pioneers in hip hop, long before I got saved out of that world and came into Christ. So
Okay. So slow down a little bit. Slow down, because I want to get to the Christ. I want to get to the Christ part of it, but let's reverse a little bit. Let's back up a little bit, and tell me about that part because that's a major transition, right? That's a major transition for one's life. You're going down a path, and then you totally shift. Something major had to happen. Right, so because I want to hear the beginning part of your salvation journey, but let's reverse a little bit to tell me a little bit about that, and then where the break came in.
Sure. Well, I mean, I got into hip hop back in 1978 before it became a thing. I remember I was at a party in Brooklyn with my mom and my stepfather. I was still like maybe 17 years old or something like that, and there was a guy there, and he was playing the music, and he was trying to DJ and rap at the same time. And I just said to myself, I can do what he's doing. So I went over there and I said to him, can I get on the mic? And he said, sure, man. So I got on the mic and I just started making stuff up. And of course, hip hop wasn't even born yet, but I saw that I had a power there. People were responding to me, and I enjoyed it. And so I started to pursue opportunities like that. And so, in the early years of hip hop, I got very immersed in the culture that really was birthed in the Bronx. In particular, in Bronx River is where the hip hop culture, that was like the harbinger, like the place of its genesis. And I was very much immersed in a part of that. I was part of what was then the Zulu Nation. This was like those are the gangs that control that territory, the Gestapo crew and the Zulu Nation. Wow. Now, when you were a rapper, you didn't really have to belong to any of the gangs. If they liked you, they would protect you. And so since we were in that territory, they considered us part of Zulu Nation. Wow. And that was where I got my start and actually made a name for myself on the streets, and to where I had a level of celebrity as a rapper. I could walk around in any neighborhood in the Bronx and be known by people. So I found that I had something inside of me that enjoyed the interaction between myself and the crowds. Mm-hmm. So that part of me that wanted to be an actor, that wanted to do those things, I found some fulfillment in doing it. But I did that for 2 years, and it was out of that culture that I came to know the Lord. And that's another story. There's a whole lot that was happening in my life at the same time, because when you're in the world of rap, my friend, there's a lot that goes with it too, right? The drugs, the lifestyle, and of course, I got taken into all of that as well, and that took me down a particular path that, it quickly brought me to the place of recognizing that I needed the Lord. But that's a whole nother story.
And we get that's part of your main story. That's because that's a major move. So, and you just say, getting caught up in the rapping, it could really wrap you in. It can really wrap you in.
I got wrapped up in it
and wrap you up. But before we get to even what breakup, because sometimes when these things happen in your life, you got to come to a prodigal son moment of a realization. What was your religious background, if any? What was religious influence on your life prior to that?
It wasn't much of anything. I think non-religious things probably turned me to the Lord more than religion.
Really?
Yeah. And growing up in the country, I grew up with a lot of what we would now call native superstitions, mixed in with some Bible and stuff. I went to an old Pentecostal church, which still sits there. I went back there in 2019, and I drove through and took pictures, and I showed my kids where I was born, where I went to school, and it made my daughter cry when she saw the little house that I was born in. But I went to that little church, and I hated it. I didn't love it. My grandmother she couldn't make the walk, but she would send me and my cousins, and it seemed like it would take forever for us to get to church. We had to walk like about 2 miles to get to the church, and it was always excessively hot. My shoes were always too tight, and we were always hungry. We were always looking to go around somebody's fruit. Once you let us out the house, we just get hungry.
Oh my goodness!
But I used to go to that little church, and I remember, the older folk there trying to teach us as much as they could about the Lord, but they were sincere, but they were ignorant. And I was, from a child, always one that asked very piercing questions, and they wouldn't answer. They couldn't answer my questions, and I didn't know at the time. And so it made me very off. It was very off-putting for me as a child that grown-ups couldn't answer basic questions that I would ask about the things of God or things that they were trying to teach me in the Bible.
Interesting.
If you're teaching me, I'm going to ask you questions. If you can't answer my questions, then I don't know where we're going to go after that.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of made me mock Christians, which was wrong of me to do that. But I thought Christianity and religion was just dumb and useless. And I knew there had to be a God somewhere, but I figured I'd find him somehow on my own. I didn't think the church or Christians really had the answer necessarily. So that set me on a path to become very open to a lot of things, a lot of strange things that I got involved with. And it all sort of came to a head and led me to the place when I had to turn to the Lord.
Thinking about just listening to you, tell me that, young Reford may be an ideological, philosophical guy, curious, skeptic, wanting to know, tell me a bit about the process. What was Reford's mind like? Philosophical, ideological, what?
Back then I wouldn't have said that, but I realize now when I know me so much better now, and because at my age, I'm in my 60s now, so I know me so much better. And I look back and I would say, yeah, I think even as a child, I was philosophical in my way of thinking. I wanted to understand things. I'm the kind of person that if I'm watching a movie, and I was always fascinated when I came here and started, I didn't grow up with television. I grew up with radio.
Mm-hmm.
I would listen to cricket on the radio, and I learned to use my imagination to see what was happening as I heard it. Right?
Well, I watch cricket through my radio too. So
exactly. So I had a tremendous imagination.
Right.
Like, I knew where every position was. So when the guy said he drove the ball
backwards,
that way,
point, silly point.
I see it. Right. So I had a very active imagination as a child, but so when I came in, I started watching television. It didn't take me long to start asking, how do they do that? How did they create that? How do they make me see that? I was no longer just looking at the movies from an entertainment standpoint. I was getting behind the scenes and
Behind the scenes, right?
how
Hmm.
can we make that happen so I can see what I'm seeing? So I think, yeah, I look back at it now. I'm extremely curious. I see it in my grandsons too. Extremely curious. I want to understand how things work, the nuts and bolts of things. And I'll ask you questions because I just feel more satisfied when I understand not just what's happening, but how is this happening? How is this happening? So yeah, to answer your question, I think I was always, kind of like a ideological, kind of philosophical, deep thinking kind of a child that wanted to understand the nature of things.
Wow. My friends, I'm talking to Bishop Dr. Reford Mott. He has a thriving church in New Rochelle, and we're gonna get to that part. But I'm journeying with him. He's my real friend, and fellow laborer, and we work together, and we're gonna maybe get to a couple of things that we work together in when we get a little bit later. But so let's reverse. Let's go back because now most people don't know Rayford's story, and that's why it's so fascinating to be on this program where we can really have a conversation. I say, who is Rayford? Who is this guy growing up who become this giant in the community? Of course, he's a giant in the community of New Rochelle. Take it from me. All right, he's a giant. He might shake his head down, but he's one of the giants in there. Everywhere you turn in New Rochelle, it's a Rayford Mott. They know the guy, so that is not average. All right,
That's because I'm always getting into trouble.
You get. I believe it's a total opposite of that, but we'll get there. All right, so tell me now. Let's go back to the wrapping mind and the breakout of that. What brought this consciousness of the mind and say, Rayford, are you sure this is where you want to go, or you want to pursue something else? Tell me what triggered the pause and say, you know what, maybe I should do something else.
Wow, that's a loaded question there. There's so much I could say, but how to say it? Let me just drive you right into the destination, right? The rap world that I got involved with had its ups and its downs, and like I said, you get sucked into it, and what comes with that is drugs, it's wild living, promiscuity, the whole 9 yards. But the drugs take their toll on you, even if you're just doing them socially. It takes your mind and your imagination places, and I somehow, in the midst of my journey there, I started to, if you can understand what's happening here now, become delusional. I started seeing as a different person. I started lapses in my concentration. I particularly, and you guys get ready for this, and some of you might be familiar with this, because this takes a turn now. My life is comedy and drama all rolled into one, right? I live with my mom, and my mom was, for the most part, single. She wasn't always single, but at this point, back in 78, 79, she was single, and I live with my mom in the Bronx, and my mom had some of her own native superstitions. She wasn't a believer either. And I remembered one time, the first time this happened, I came home one night, and I went home and I went to my room. And as I went to my room, a little bit after I went to my room and went to my bed and laid down, my mom got up and started pleading the blood of Jesus and rebuking the devil. And I didn't know what was going on. And after about maybe 10 minutes of that drama, my mom came to my room and said to me that every time I go out of the house and come in, something follows me. A spirit follows me back into the home and begins to attack her.
Oh, wow.
And to disturb her. And that sobered me a lot. And, it kind of brought me to a place of, okay. And so she said to me, listen to this very carefully. My mom said to me, whenever you come in at night, before you come in the house, she says, turn around and come in backwards. And I would do that. And whenever I did that, nothing would happen. But if I would be careless and forget, this thing would happen. So those things began to, the reason why I recall that, because it's important, those things began to shift my mind back to wondering about the spirit world and wondering about that reality that for some years now I had kind of left behind and neglected it. I figured, I'm done with superstition. I'm done with religion. I'm going to explore all these ways that people can experience life without religion. But I began to see that even in some of my mom's native superstition, that there was some reality that I'd missed and I didn't quite understand about the spirit world. Now, again, I'm not praising native superstitions. I'm not suggesting to you that those are good things. We understand things culturally, in a limited way, based on tradition and culture and our context teaches us. It's not necessarily a biblical worldview, but that is how those things were understood at the time. Nevertheless, they were nonetheless real. And so when those things happened with my mom, I had to admit that something very, very real, that I could not see or fully understand was a part of my reality, and I needed to start paying attention to that. And nevertheless, I kept going further and further into my own world, doing what I was doing. As long as I did what my mom said, nothing would happen, and so forth and so on. But those things left a mark on me. I can back up a couple of years prior to that, when I was 9 years old in Jamaica, when my grandmother, my grandmother's mother, was 94 years old when she died. She was bedridden until the day she died. And she was an old Indian woman, old coolie woman, named Miss Mary. And she was in her bed, and every night me and my cousins would go and sit by her bed, and she would tell us stories and stuff, and we loved her. And I remembered something happened to me at the age of 9. All right, that if I don't want to frighten anyone here, but I remember one time my cousin and I, a lady asked us to come and pick some breadfruit because she didn't have any young boys in her yard, and so she come and borrow me and my cousin to come and pull some breadfruit off the tree for her. And under her breadfruit tree was a family plot. There was her mom and one of her older sisters that died, and we would always sit on the grave and and talk and goof off because these were people that we knew like family.
Right.
So we would even play around on the grave as kids. It was nothing to us, But this particular day, my cousin was up in the tree picking breadfruit, and I was jumping up and down on the grave and jumping up and down and stomping on the headstone. My brothers, this chilled me to my heart, but it set a tone for me also. It made me always revert back to that incident. I went home. Now remember, this is in the late 60s or the early 70s, like 71 or something maybe. I'm 9 years old. All right? I go home. My bedridden grandmother is in her room sleeping. She calls me into her room. She says to me, "Come here." And I says to her, "Yes." She says, "Were you just down on jumping up on Mrs. Lynette's grave a few minutes ago?" And my face went, if I could lose the color in my face.
Wow. And
I said, she said, "You were." And she said, "Let me tell you something, little boy. Don't you ever do that again." She said, "Miss Lynette came and told me to say to you, never ever do that again." No, I can't question that. I leave that.
Oops. Did we get you frozen there? I hope you break out of that. Oh, I hope Miss Lynette didn't come on by here. Did we lose the bishop? Oh my goodness, what happened? I'm talking to Bishop Reford Mott, my friends. I hope that we can get him back. Hang in there with me. He just got frozen somewhere. All right, we're gonna come back and see if I can get Bishop Mott back. All right, so hang in there, my friends. We're gonna see if we get the bishop back.
Twitter.
Give me a J, give me a E, give me a S, give me a U, give me a S. What does that stand? Oh, my Lord is me. Now give me a J.
All right, so the bishop is back. The bishop is back. All right, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I cannot see you.
All right. You can see me?
I see you now, yes.
Okay, good. All right. Man, I don't know what happened. You just froze. I don't know. I don't know Miss Mary thing. I don't know what that happened. I don't know if the fake that.
Let's move on from there.
I don't know if the jumping on that grave affect that just by telling the story. But let's keep it going now. Let's keep it going now. My goodness. My goodness.
Well, you can imagine at the age of 9 how that experience marked my life.
Right.
And I think, as I was saying, that sometimes, it's like breadcrumbs that you leave on the trail. So if you stray from the path, you can find your way back.
Right.
Because I do remember years down the road, those thoughts were in my head. Even when I was struggling with the idea of even for a moment believing that maybe atheists are correct and there is no God.
So before you get to that, what was your reaction to your grandma on her bed? You know that she didn't come out to see you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I knew it didn't take much pondering to realize that there was something on the supernatural side, that had happened there, which I couldn't explain. My folks would always say, "This one dream come tell me say," and that one dream come tell me say. And I would, as a child, you went with it. But then as you get old, you start saying, "Oh, that was just there's superstitions." But I can't throw those things out and I can't explain them because I lived through an experience like that to this day, as much wisdom as I've gathered through the years, I still cannot explain that, but to leave that one alone. All I know is God used it to kind of mark a path for me.
Wow.
Remember, if you're going to get off on this path of thinking about a material world where there is no God and where it feels comfortable to you to think that all of this is a big cosmic accident and that you can live your life anyhow you want to because you don't want to be answerable to God. Just remember, there are things in this world that you yourself have lived that has proven to you that there's more to life than the material world. And even though you can't explain it, one thing is for sure is that those things point to the fact that there is a spirit world. And if there is such a thing as a spirit world, then you have to come to grips with the fact that there is a God somewhere, and you need to find out who that God is. So all of those things really serve that purpose in my life. Again, God knows everyone's heartbeat, the language of everyone's heart. What proves God to me is not what may prove God to another person, but God knows what Ray Mott needed to know for himself that he's there and that he's And I can give you a few more experiences like that as I move towards my journey. Now, during that process of time, one of the things I got involved with, and I say this now on the other side of it, is I got involved with Obia. And the reason why I got involved is because my mom came to the conclusion that someone had done something to me. And if you live in a culture where Obia is part of that culture, if somebody do something to you, you have to go and get Obia man to get it off of you.
Right.
And so I went to see Obia woman in Brooklyn. And I'm talking about this now because it's a tremendous part of my testimony. And all of this led me to where I am today. Wow. And this Obia woman did some other things that also shocked me and made me realize I'm dealing with something here. And I said, somehow I know that this is not good, but even this bears witness to me that there's a spirit world and I need to investigate the reality of that and find who God is.
Wow.
And one of the things she gave me to do was she gave me some things to carry around in my pocket, so supposedly for protection.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave me Psalm 27 to read every morning before I got out of my bed. And she gave me some other little things to do. And I did those things religiously, and that was my life. But the more I did that, the more confused I got, the more heavy and confused my mind got, the more forgetful I became, and the more delusional I became. I began to see myself as someone else, and even began to call myself by that name.
Wow.
And I knew that my life wasn't right. And my mother saw me going through those changes, and she out of desperation, she realized that thing ain't working. So she tried to get church people to come to the house and pray for me. That's a whole nother experience I won't get into just now. But what is significant to my story is that during my time, I couldn't keep going to Brooklyn to see this woman. I found, I think she recommended a guy in the Bronx, a Spanish Puerto Rican man who was an espiritista, who is the same thing. A espiritista is like an obia man in Spanish obia man. So I started going to this man every Saturday morning. He took a liking to me. Now watch this. And this man wanted to teach me to do what he was doing.
Oh, wow.
He started to, I would come and we'd have breakfast and we would spend time together and we would talk, and he was mentoring me and slowly letting me into how we operated. Sometimes he would say, I have to see someone now. And he would leave me alone and go into the room, and someone would come and he would spend time with them, consult with them. They would give him his money. They would go and he'd come back and talk to me. And that became something that I was drawn to, not so much because of the obia, but I also think I liked the dynamic because I never had a father in my life. And he was becoming kind of like a father figure to me, because here was this man talking to me and taking time to teach me something that was important to him. And so I was going. Now, before I got too deep, one Saturday morning, afternoon, after I left him, I was on my way home. It was in the month of August. That's all I remembered. I was standing on the street corner waiting for a bus. And if you all will excuse me, because I know you can't imagine your bishop doing this, I was smoking a joint. I was smoking a spliff. And I'm there waiting for the bus, smoking this spliff. You hear me?
I hear you.
And this woman, and I'm telling you, Doc, she's as dark as the dark part of the screen here. She was dressed up in white, down to her ankles, and her head was wrapped. You know, like them Poco Mina. She came around the corner out of nowhere, and she walked right. It's like she wasn't walking anywhere but up to me. She came towards me like, you're my assignment. This woman walked right up to me, and she said, yay, the Lord would say to you, my son. And she begins to prophesy to me that God was going to make me a preacher, and I was going to travel around the world and preach the gospel.
Wow.
I lost my high. I threw away that spliff. I was so shaken. And when I looked around, after she shook me up so much, I'm not going to say she vanished into thin air, but as God is my witness, I looked all over the Grand Concourse for that woman. I could not find her anywhere. She was gone. And I got on the bus shaking. And I got home. And
What age were you at that point?
I think I was 19 at the time, because that was the year when I came to the Lord.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we're building it up. All right.
And when she did that, I went home and I told my mom, I said, how could this woman come up to me like that? She don't even know me and telling me all this stuff about I'm going to preach and travel. And my mom said, wow. She said, where did that happen? So I explained it to her. She said, son, God is calling you. And I said, okay, whatever, because it's Saturday and I have a party tonight. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I said, whatever, we'll discuss this another time,
Oh, wow.
This weekend, this is my time, right?
When my party is over, I'll think about that,
we
right?
can talk. But from that moment, my mom began to bring church people. Anywhere she met any person that looked like they had some kind of thing, these people would come to my house and pray and try to, but no one ever sat down. Here's the funny thing, Bishop Beckford, my friend, nobody ever sat down and explained the gospel to me. It's the weirdest thing. Nobody ever sat down and said, hey, look, man, you're a sinner. Here's how the plan of God works. You need to put your trust in Jesus. Nobody presented the gospel to me. They presented a lot of foolishness. I had one lady lay hands on me and spoke in tongues until she fell out on the floor. And I'm standing there looking at her and saying, okay, I'm glad you're having fun. And it just further alienated me from church people. It alienated me from, like, this is not helping me at all. And I told my mom, I said, stop bringing these people to this house to pray for me. I've had enough of it. God's going to help me. He's going to have to find another way. But these people are not helping me.
Wow.
And so those were the things that led to, my starting to, God narrowing the trail for me. The Psalm 27 that I was reading, it began to speak to me. Even though the woman gave it to me under the auspices of, using her witchcraft, whatever, for protection. But the Psalm began to speak to me. It began to make me think about God in a way that I'd never thought about God. And God used all of that to bring me to November 23rd, 1980.
You know what, as you get to the date, I'm just going to drop this in there. Despite the fact that none of these things meant any sense to you and did not help your superstition and your skepticism, but overall, God knew what it would take,
yes,
to break and to turn Reford around.
Yes.
So although it didn't make any sense to you, God knew what the steps were that's gonna take you around. So bring us back now to your date of your 18 now, when something began to happen to you personally.
Well, my mom, she was not a traveling nurse, but she was a caregiver for senior people at the time, and she had an assignment in Queens with an African American family with an older elderly woman that was bound to a wheelchair. But she was a strong Christian, and she went to a church over there called the Tabernacle of Prayer. It was on Jamaica Avenue in Queens, and Apostle Johnny Washington, he's now with the Lord. And my mom went to the church, and it was quite a church. It was a very powerful church. It was about maybe 1,500 people, and back then that was unheard of.
That's a big church.
Oh yes, he had one of those movie theaters with the balcony, and one of those old ornate, beautiful movie theaters, and that place would be packed to the rafters every Sunday. And it was by all intents and purposes a mega church back then. And my mom took the lady to the church, and she was just blown away by the whole experience. So she called me and said to me, she found a church in Queens. It's just that I don't want, my mom's, I was getting very annoyed with her and these church people. But she said, son, please do me, I beg you, just one last time. Come over here. Meet me at this church. I think you're going to love it, son. You're going to love it. It's different. It's different. And my mom never stopped until I said, okay, mom. So I agreed to go the following Sunday with her. And I drove over and I met her there. And that's when my life changed. It was absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you, another supernatural experience happened to me along the way. Is that the great service, the music was dynamic. I was totally caught up with everything. I preached his heart out. But before he preached, there was a segment there where it was after he preached. Before two things happened. It's so long ago, I need to keep this right in my head, because as you get older, things get jumbled up. So after worship, there was the offering. My mama gave me $5. She said, go down there and put this in the offering. And I said, like, $5?
That's a whole lot, right?
Are you kidding me? I said, you want me to do the whole thing? She said, yeah, just go and put it in the offering. I said, oh, okay. So I went and I put it in the offering. And look here, man, I'm going down the aisle to put this money, and this preacher's up there on the pulpit prancing around looking, and he see me and the music playing. He says, hold it, stop the music. And he pointed at me. He said, brother, he said, when I say a big church, I say I want a big church, and the church full of people. I'm coming down the middle aisle with buying some people. He say, you. I mean, look back and say, you. And I go so sheepishly. I said, me? He said, yes, you. Come. I smell witchcraft on
Oh,
you.
Lord of mercy.
He said,
Really?
you've been messing around with witchcraft. I don't need you to
Oh,
tell me.
dear God
I
of
said,
mercy.
God in heaven.
Oh,
But you know
Lord
what?
of mercy.
As frightening as that was, I felt safe because
Oh, my
because
goodness.
for the first time I realized that God had power. I never knew
Wow.
churches. I never seen Christians move with power. I'd never experienced the power of God. I just used to see a bunch of people that were dead and dry and talking about things they didn't understand. Now this man looked and said, "You've been messing with witchcraft." I was embarrassed, but I said, "Guilty." He said, "Come, this is your day."
Wow.
And let me tell you something in front of everybody. That man read my mail and told the whole church what I've been doing.
Oh, my goodness.
You hear me? The whole church.
Oh,
I'm
my
like,
goodness.
I'm done now. I am
Oh,
something good better
my
happen right here
goodness.
for all of
Oh,
this.
my goodness.
This better get good because I am out now, right?
And you talking about you don't have a great story. Are you kidding me?
Hey, man, listen to what the man said. He said, empty your pockets. Now,
Wow. Oh, my
you've been
goodness.
carrying things in your pocket. Take on
Lord
that.
have mercy.
And let me tell you something, Doc. I was scared, but I felt like this is it. I've met God. God just found me, and I'm so happy. And I threw everything down on the altar, and the elder came over, put some oil on him. In the name of Jesus, he said, pow. And when that man put his hand on me, people of God, I don't know how I would explain it to you, but I started to say, like, when I was becoming delusional, I didn't say this part. When I would lay down in my bed, if I lay down this way on my back, I would feel as if my head was sinking through the bed. It felt so heavy. I could not get up. I would have to turn around backwards and get up, but I could never get up. I would always feel like someone was pushing me down in the bed. And that had gone on for almost like a year when I started to go through this whole delusional phase. When that man laid his hands on me that day, I with my eyes closed, I saw in the spirit that there was a monkey sitting around on my shoulder with its tail wrapped around my neck, and its hands squeezing, holding onto my head like this. That's what I saw in the spirit. And when he laid hands on me, it's like it just went and just disappeared like a balloon and just popped and just disappeared. And brother, in a nanosecond, I felt the freedom. I felt like somebody threw cold water on me on a hot day. And I felt like this amazing sensation. I felt light. I felt like a sanity that I hadn't felt in a long time. And I came back to myself. And in that moment, I was delivered. And so this is why I tell people, I don't have to ask about the power of God. I know the power of God is real because I'm the byproduct of deliverance. I'm the byproduct of supernatural deliverance. I'm the byproduct of the prophetic, and I'm the byproduct of a man that carried the deliverance anointing on his life till the day he died. And I'm gonna tell you what, when he did that, I walked back to my seat. I almost could not feel the floor under my feet. And I sat there that day and I listened to him preach. And after he finished preaching, he did the thing that nobody ever did. He unfolded the plan of God. And he stood there and he said, is there one more? And people kept running to the altar. He said, you need to give your life to Jesus. He said, tomorrow is not promised to anybody. I said, now you're talking to me. But I'm still sitting there because guess what? I have a party planned up for the weekend coming. I can't. If I do this, party done. No
the whole plan messed up.
The whole plan messed up. I have all these girls. I have my guys.
Oh, Lord.
What?
Oh, my good Lord.
I can't accept Jesus and go back and do them things there, you know? So it was really, really a fight for my soul. And I'm sitting there in my seat knowing that this man is finally telling me what I've been begging God to hear. And finally, a woman behind me tapped me on the shoulder and said, son, I see you're fighting there. Fighting. She said, if I walk down there with you, will you go? I said, yes, ma'am. And I shuffled out of my seat and she shuffled from the row behind me. And I met her in the aisle. And I don't even remember what the woman looked like. She put her hand on my shoulder and she walked me right down to the altar. I never saw her again. And that day I lifted my hands and I said, yes, Lord.
My good Lord.
November
My good
23rd,
Lord.
1980, I became a new creation in Jesus Christ.
My good Lord. My good Lord. My friends, I'm talking to Bishop Dr. Reford Mott, my friend, a minister, a stalwart for the kingdom. I'm wondering how many people who know Reford have any glimpse of his story. I wonder if all these remnant pastors that you have had this relationship for all these years, if they ever know your journey to become to where you are. That is incredible. I hope that everybody hit your share button and invite your friends to join us to for the remaining portion of this story, because we are just gonna get into where ministry began and all of those things. So this is incredible. Bishop, you try to make me think like, oh, I have no great story. That is a loaded journey. I mean, that is a loaded journey. How many people have those pinpointed experiences? How many people have those pinpointed experiences? And it just tells me that's what God had to do to break you and to take you out of your curiosity or skepticism. Are you anti-Christian thinking or whatever you want to call that? That is just beyond incredible.
I look back at it now, and it encourages me in a lot of ways, because there are many me's out there. There are many people like me out there, and I think the way I do ministry today, I'm always thinking about the me's, the people who think like me. Mm-hmm. I style myself as a skeptic that wants to be convinced, and I'm open. I'm skeptical because you need to bring a good, clear, strong argument to me, and if you do, I'll listen. I don't want to be a skeptic. I don't want to be an unbeliever, but you need to make sense. You need to make something make sense.
I got you.
I think that most people are like that. Some people are just going to resist no matter what you do. But most people are like me. And I think when I'm preaching and when I'm ministering and when I'm sharing, I'm thinking about the me's out there. The many people who are like with my kind of mindset. They just need you to be clear and simple and make them realize what is not clear to them. So I always appreciate good teaching, good preaching, clear preaching, and that's gospel centric, because without the gospel we have nothing. We have absolutely nothing.
My wife is all in on the comments, because she loves you a lot, and that you're one of her favorite guys, and she's really pouring in on you.
I'm my big sister.
Yeah. There are many of my guests that the Lord has placed a thought in my heart, a couple of thoughts in my heart, and one of them that, and every now and then, not every guest I shared it, but every now and then it pops back into my mind to share with that guest, because the Lord has just done something in my spirit. So one of these days, God will unveil to you the mystery of your history. One of these days,
I like it.
One of these days, He will unveil to you the mystery of your history.
Sir. Yes, sir.
And all the things that didn't make sense and still don't make sense. When you're able to look back, that's when you're able to put the pieces together. But right where you are, no one going is like it not making any sense. But one of these days, He'll unveil to you the mystery of your history. And part of that in your ministry is what God has done through your life to you, in order to make you as effective as you are. Because I hear you say that when you're preaching, teaching, you're looking at the other Reford Motts who may be experiencing in the same position that you were, and you have to make sense for yourself in order for it to impact them. So that there you go.
Yeah, I've never liked the idea that somehow Christianity seems to ask you to check your mind at the door. I don't want any part of that. I think that something has to make sense for me, and certainly Christianity must be subjectable to reason. It is a reasonable faith, and so if we think otherwise, then we are making a mistake. And this is why we're not reaching the intellectuals who themselves hunger to know God, but they hunger to have God presented to them in a way that it has to make some sense. Some people do think and they do question things, and more often than not. And so it doesn't mean they don't want God. They just want to understand what it is that you're asking them to do.
Yeah, it is so smart and so intelligent what you're saying. And my wife has said, the younger minds are very intelligent and they are curious, and it's not because they are evil, but they, just like you, they want answers, and you need to have answers when they ask you questions. I think that's where a lot of us fall short, because we ourselves are not knowledgeable, we are not intelligent, we are not versed on the word, we don't have the understanding of the depth of the manifestation, operation, and even the salvation process and grace. I mean, those things, a lot of us are not able to define when the curious mind, not the skeptic, but the curious. Because sometimes we think if people ask questions, they are skeptical and they're evil and they don't want God. But they need to explain. We need to have an understanding heart. And they say, the Bible says, how can they hear without a preacher? And how can they preach without he sent? And et cetera, et cetera. And they need to have an understanding of. But you have to teach them for them to understand.
Clearly, my brother. Clearly.
And I can see why. See why your ministry is where it is, because of your own experience. And this is what is resonating with me. As you say, when I'm preaching to an audience, I am thinking of me. The curious, the skeptic, they want to learn, they want to understand, not rejecting, but they want to be convinced that this makes sense.
It has to be reasonable. And there is absolutely nothing. Being reasonable is not antithetical to being spiritual. Neither is being practical. I think that's what we tend to make Christianity something that is more subjective. But Christianity is based on objective truth. And faith is based on knowledge. I can only trust God as far as I know His word, as far as I understand Him. It's not based on subjectivity. It's not based on feeling. Feeling is subjective, but faith is based on objective truth. So objective truth is the foundation of reasoning. So we can't preach and teach or have conversations with anyone without that being, being in the forefront of how we're presenting the things of God to people.
My goodness, you know that we gonna hour, right? We gonna hour.
Oh my God!
We gonna hour, except that little freeze here, and we don't, and we're still at your youth days. We're still at your youth days.
How long is this program, bro?
Now we'll tell people if it's okay, we do an hour. If it's good, we do a hour and a half, and if it's really good, we might do 2 hours and then come back to finish it up the next time. So, but listen, I did not expect any of this in your story.
Wow.
I had no clue what I was gonna hear, and this is just like captivating. I mean, everybody's like really get caught with this story because it's an amazing story. All right, let's see if we can fast forward a little bit for your sake. Now, you make a decision. You decide, okay, my life is turned around. What was Mott's next step now? No, I can't go where I used to go. My life is changed. By the way, did you go to the party, or what was the decision for that night?
I had to burn all the bridges, man, and it was a hard thing for me to do. But I had to go tell all my friends what happened to me.
Wow.
And I told them that it would be good for them to come to church with me at least one time for themselves to see. And they went.
They did.
I got my whole crew to go to church with me.
What?
And 2 out of the 3 of them that went to the altar. But they just did it. I mean, they felt it. They knew it was real, the power of God. They experienced the power of God, but they kept on going because they were more committed to the pursuit of fame. What happened to me was different. What happened to me, really, my journey was different. I was at a different place in my journey. So when that happened to me, I knew that God's hand was on me for good. Nobody had to tell me to stop doing those things. I knew that I needed to pursue God. You know what else I did? I went to my Spiritista the next Saturday, as I normally would. And I told him, I said, I went to church last week and I told him what happened to me. And I told him how I was feeling, that God had done something in my life and I'm free and I'm happy. And I said, I want you to come to church with me.
Wow.
And he said, yeah, it's okay. I said, no, you have to come. You say that you're doing God's work here. I think you would really benefit from learning this much more about God. At least come with me one time and experience it for yourself. And guess what? He came to church with me.
Wow.
I picked him up and he came to church with me. And an interesting thing happened when he came to the church. 20 minutes in, he said, excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom. And I noticed he was sweating, just sweating and sweating until he couldn't take it anymore. He said, I'm going to the bathroom. I said, okay. I kept worshiping and he went to the bathroom. And the bathroom's on the lower level in the lower lobby. After a while, I didn't see him, so I went looking for him. And I found him down there, standing up in the lower lobby. I said, are you okay? You should come back upstairs. And he walked back upstairs with me very sheepishly. But before we turned to go inside the church, he said, listen, I can't go back in there.
Too much power in there, right?
I'll wait for you here, he says. And he stayed at the door outside on the street until the church was over. The demons would not let him.
The Spirit of God was haunting him in there.
And the demons would not let him. They weren't ready to let him go.
Because, and again, it proves to you again, the power of the Spirit and the differences and the resistance between them. Because, and again, as you grow in your spirituality and you grow as a minister and you understand the working of God, you realize that demonic forces are really real, and they demonic forces identify when the presence of God is present. Right? When the presence of God is present.
And that lesson came home to me very powerfully. My mother said to me as we were after we dropped him off, saying, "Can't stay at the church." And this is the man. I learned. That taught me. That was a whole chapter of a book for me right there.
You know, my mind went back to this guy living among tombs, crying and cutting himself with stone, yes. And saw the demons saw Jesus coming, and they're echoing before he said anything. Thou son of David, are you coming to torment us before the time? Because so the resistance and the recognition.
Yes.
And that's why I say you when you fake this thing, devil will fight you back. If you don't have the power to subdue evil forces, that will knock you over.
Absolutely. But in the space of 2 weeks, I learned so much just out of my own experience, not just from going to church, but just from what God had done to me and the people around me. How the impact my testimony had on them, and because they knew me. My guys knew me. I was wild. I was the leader of the pack, okay? Wow. I was a wild guy. And when they saw that I had changed, they said, oh, my God, you are for real.
I know.
I said, yes, I am. And they backed off and they respected me. But I learned so much from what happened with that Espiritista. I learned so much from those few things that led up to my salvation. By the time I'd gotten saved, I had a fairly good understanding of some things that some people would have had to go to school to learn, because I'd lived through them and seen them for myself.
Incredible. I'm talking to Bishop Reford Mott, my friend, my fellow laborer, co-worker. We have done a lot together since I met him a few 10 years ago. We've done a lot together since then.
You moved to New Rochelle.
Since I came to New Rochelle, right? It's been amazing. All right. So you're still young. When did you now figure where you want to go? After your life changed now, God got a hold on your life now. How did you determine where you're going to go now?
I didn't really determine anything. My whole life has been a story of God leading me and making me look smarter than I really am. People always think I'm the one who figure these things out. But a lot of things that I've done and a lot of things that I'm doing, God sort of drags me into it. And I realize it after the fact, hey, look what I'm doing. Because because that's just the way God is with me. He leads me into things, and then I wake up and realize, hey, how did I get here? It's not always because I determined that that's what I'm going to do, but there are some things that I determined that I'm going to do.
All right. Before you get to the things where you're going to do,
Yeah.
let's see. At what point did you decide that you're gonna get married? You need a girl or a wife. Now I'm a Christian boy. I gotta settle myself down. How did you make decision of where you're gonna go into ministry or things before, or you made a decision that I need to find myself a partner, compatible, etc. Which one came first?
Oh, the partner and then ministry.
Okay. All right. So break me into that.
We're having this conversation in front of all these people.
That's the fascinating thing about stories, right? That's the fascinating thing about stories, the inspiration of stories, the fascination of stories, the uniqueness of stories. I mean, you can only say what you want to say. You can only say what you want to say. I'm not prodding you or plowing you like Samson say. I'm not plowing you. I'm just gonna say, tell me whatever you feel comfortable in telling. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I was young when I got saved. I was just barely 20 years old. But obviously, getting married and getting a family was a priority for me. That's all I ever really wanted. And so obviously ministry grew out of that. My wife Sherry, that I'm with to this today, we've been married 35 years. She came into my life while I was serving under Bishop Carl Alexander. And that's a pastor that also had a very strong impact on my life in the early years. I left the church that I got saved in because it was quite a trek to get to Queens when I lived in the Bronx, and it became an environment that I really couldn't grow in, because every Sunday it was more of the same, and that's great. But if there's no teaching going on, that's not going to keep me. I mean, I can't. While it's fantastic to see the power of God on display in miracles and stuff, that's not feeding my intellect. It's not helping me understand the things of God. So I left and I found sort of like a new family with a very small church, a pastor that I met that was starting a church in his home. And I just latched on to him again. He became like a father to me. And I think I liked being around him for that reason. But he was also a good teacher, and he was a good musician. He played the guitar, his wife played the piano, and she could sing. Her whole family, they came from a singing family out of Philly. And so, and he was a teacher. And so I sat under him for about 12 years. And it was there that I met my wife, Sherry. And I was the head usher, if you want to know how I met her. I guess that's what you want to know.
Oh, go on and tell us the story. Intrigue us,
Well, I won't get into the details. But
that's all right. We'll take what you give. We'll take what you give. We're not going to ask you for what we don't know.
Let's just say if my wife were here now, she would tell you, I did not like that dude. She says that every time I tell her story.
Listen, when we go to dinner next time, we will talk about that. That's going to be the table talk when we go to the next time.
And I was scared. I never dated her. I was terrified of being alone with women, given my past.
Right.
And I had the fear of God on me in a big way. So we would not go out. And the only way we hung out, I would tell y'all young people this, I don't know if y'all could stand that today, was after church every Friday night, we'd all go out together in groups. And the guys would drop all the girls off before we went home. That's how we did it back then, because we had the fear of God on us.
Yeah. Yeah, where I came from, we didn't even go out like that, we just like were so saved and so scared and so so and so sanctified. We wouldn't even go out. We wouldn't go out unless we were going to some fasting or some program somewhere.
Yeah, it had to be some church program or something. Well, we had a little bit more freedom.
you did a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more than we had, yeah.
Yeah, but similarly, you know, and I never dated my wife. The first time I went out on a date with her was when I bought the ring and decided to propose to her.
And I know that's foolishness to the average person right now. Foolishness makes no sense to the average person right now. But then look at the longevity, right? Look at the longevity. They can't see that now, and some of these people are exploring everything before they get married, and the marriage are lasting a couple of days, weeks, and months and years. And look at guys like you. You're 35. I'm gone 45. You know, and we never run out about no date. We like you love the person. You get an agreement. You get married. That's it. That's how we did it back then.
Almost like an arranged marriage. But you know, we're still.
Yeah, but here we are, man, by the grace of God, man.
Yeah.
And by the way, he has a beautiful, gorgeous, tremendous lady as his wife and partner, fellow labor in ministry. A beautiful lady. You know, we've hung out so many times, have dinner together so many times. We know each other very well. So we know the beautiful lady that he has as his wife. All right. So okay, you got a beautiful lady. We're not gonna probe your story on that. You know, one of these days maybe I'll have you on her on my program. So we can say, and she can say, oh no, remember this. You know, she can bring up some reminders of what she liked.
She'll remember some things that I forgot. I promise you.
All right, now you have the lady of your life, and now you're going into ministry. Where did you go now? Ministry, come on. How did the pursuit of ministry or the birth of ministry come?
Oh, we're gonna be here all night.
No, we're gonna take synopsis of it. We're gonna just take synopsis.
All right. The church that I met my wife in, and the pastor that I was very attached to, at some point we had to leave that church. I'd spent 12 years there, but we had to leave that church, and I'll just put it to you like this. I'd say 1992, we left there. I had to leave there under much duress. It was one of the most heartbreaking things, because I'd never envisioned myself doing anything else but serving him, traveling with him, and just being one of the guys in the church, which, you know, I helped build that church. I brought a lot of people to the church, a lot of men to the church, a lot of solid people. I was always an influencer. I never really felt like I had to have my own. I love working with other people. If I like you and I trust you, I'm loyal to you, I'll build with you, and I'll build for you. And I'm just as satisfied doing that as I am doing it for myself, if you would say, being my own, right. Being a pastor of my own church. I never really had any ambition to be a pastor. I never really wanted to be a pastor, but I would have served alongside my pastor, and I would have been happy to do that. But I never really saw myself having my own church or doing any of that. And many times, I can remember two specific times, a guy named, there was a couple used to be on TBN back in the early days, named Steve and Marilyn Sampson, came to minister. That name may be familiar to some of you if you're old enough to remember Steve and Marilyn Sampson. They were popular on TBN back in the early days of Christian TV. And they came through and ministered at our church. And I remember he was the first one to give me a prophetic word about the call of God in my life. And again, because I filtered what he said through the prism of my own imagination, I didn't think then that it meant that God was literally calling me to be a pastor. I said, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to be a pastor here with my pastor. I'm going to be one of the pastors here, and I'm okay with that. And so I just kind of filed that in my head. So I didn't have a problem with if God raised me up to be a pastor. I just never envisioned being called to pastor a church. And then a couple of other times, almost everywhere my wife and I went, we were being almost to the point where I started becoming concerned, because it was happening so much that, you know, let me just leave it there. I just want to say that we had to leave the church. September 1992, I had to leave the church. Not because I wanted to go start my church. It just became a very difficult place for me to stay. And I, you know, my former pastor, God rest his soul, he's with the Lord now. We sent him home last year, and if I had not called his name, I might have been able to go into more things, but I would not
Right.
do that.
Yeah, got you.
But he's with the Lord now, and towards the end of his life, he and I were able to reconcile, and you know, and so that went really well. But in the beginning, you know, there was a lot of things between us, and so I left the church in 1992 with my family and just commenced to be on the lam. I was out there. I would take my kids and we would visit different churches. I started to go to one church, and immediately, you know, the pastor took me in and started, you know, having me driving him around and serving him. And, you know, came to find out he was a very dishonest man. Came to find out that he had children in the church with other women. Came to find out that he was stealing the church money, and came to find out that he was under investigation by the federal government. I won't call his name either. So we left his church, and after things were going so well, we left his church, and I was just disillusioned after I left my church, and I would just sometimes have prayer with my family on Sunday mornings and would not go to church. But in the summer of 1994, I had some friends who had also left the church that I had come out of, and they had found a church in Harlem that they were going to. This is important. And they said, you know, Ray and Sherry, you all should come with us, you know, and come to this church with us. And they kept inviting us. I'm like, listen, I'm so sick of church and Christians and pastors and the hypocrisy. I've had enough. I don't know what I'm going to do, but right now I just don't want to go to church. And I was literally just sinking into a very dark place. And God always visited me since I was a child in dreams and visions. And there was one particular week during the summer of 1994. I had some interesting things happen in the space of 1 week. There was one night I went to sleep and I had a dream, and it was just me sitting in a room like this on a chair with my hands under my chin, with my head down like this. And I looked up, and the door was cracked open. The room that I was in was completely dark, but the door was cracked and light was coming in through the crack of the door. And as I lifted up my head and I looked at the open door, I woke up out of my sleep. And the voice of the Lord said to me, the door is not opening, it's closing. And I got very, very scared. And I told my wife what I'd seen. And she said, maybe we should go to that church tomorrow that Ron and Kathy been inviting us to. And I said, okay, sure. Not tomorrow, but she said on Sunday. Mm-hmm. That same Saturday, I'm sitting on my stoop, having just cut the grass on my lawn, cleaning my tools. And I was just sitting there just ruminating over things. And where's my life going? You know, what is happening to us? You know, it's been like 2 years since we left the church, almost 2 years, and I'm not in a church, and I never wanted my life to go like this, but I just can't find a church where there's an honest, honesty and integrity and authenticity. And I'm so sick of, here I go again, you know, not liking Christians and church and stuff, you know, and I want my kids to be in church. And so I was just sitting there, and Sherry comes, and, you know, back then we didn't have no cell phone, you know, you had to take the phone off the hook and bring it. So my wife said, she said the phone's ringing. So I went inside and I got on the phone and picked up the phone, and it was her boss. She used to work for a lady who ran a nursery in a shelter in the South Bronx, and her husband was a pastor in Mount Vernon. And she for some reason she liked me. She used to ask my wife, "Can your husband preach?" And my wife said, "I guess so. I don't know. He's not a pastor or nothing." She said, "I'm gonna have him come preach one time." And she used to have me preach in their church on Sunday evenings for a while. And I wasn't even a pastor, but she just felt like letting me do that.
Right.
So she called me. By now I had a relationship, but she called me and she said, "Brother Mott, I need to tell you something." And she said, "I had a dream about you, and I saw you. I was coming. Me and my husband were coming around to visit you in your home, and we couldn't get into the block. There were so many cars. There were double cars parked on the sidewalk, And we finally got to your house. Your house was packed, full of people, and you were standing there teaching people. And everybody was just sitting there looking at you, looking up at you, and they seemed so fulfilled and so satisfied. And she said to me, now, I don't need no interpretation. When God speaks to me like that, it's plain. God is calling you to ministry, and you need to stop running from God. And I started to shake, and I said, you please don't do that. She said, I know what you're going to tell me, but I need you to hear what I'm telling you now. And I say this with all respect to you. You need to stop running from God. And she hung up the phone. And I went back out in the steps, and I was shook up. 15 minutes later, I got a phone call from that same couple that had moved, a couple that had moved away and were now living up in Boston. We used to go to that church together. They called me and said, hey, by the way, for some reason, my husband and I were talking, and I don't know. We just feel like you and Sherry are supposed to start a church. I know what you're going to say, Ray, but, you know, sometimes you have to sort of maybe get over those feelings and just think that maybe God might be calling you. And I'm like, stop. Okay, just stop it already. Thank you. Hung up the phone. And before the hour was up, another couple called me from the church that I'd left, but they were still, they were the only couple that still talked to us, called us and said, let me tell you something. I know you and your wife need to have a church, because there's a lot of people right here in this church right now that are miserable and they don't know what to do. And they keep asking, are you going to start a church? And I said, well, I'm not starting no church, because if that's what it's going to mean, that y'all going to come up here, that I'm going to be called a church splitter, I'm not doing that either. Boom, hung up the phone. In the space of 1 hour, I had 3 witnesses. And then I had that dream working. So that Sunday morning, I got up and said, okay, honey, let's go to church. I took my family to church, and I went to this little church in Harlem. It was a Puerto Rican pastor. It was an English service, but it was Spanish, mostly Puerto Rican, second generation Puerto Rican, all speak English. But a nice church, contemporary worship service, nice people. So we went in, we sat down, enjoyed the worship, sat down. The pastor, in the middle of worship, he said, hold it, stop the music. Stop the music.
Again?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He said, I have never done this before. I am not a prophet or anything. I would not tell you that I know anything, but God spoke to me very clearly. And there is someone here in this service today that, and wait, I wrote it down. God says, he took out a little piece of yellow paper. God says, I'm calling you. And he began to speak in such a way that I knew he was talking to me. And he says, and God says, I'm to anoint you today for ministry, because today's your day. So I didn't go. My wife looked at me and says, I am not going down there. About 10 people ran down there. They got prayed over, whole commotion. And then that ended. They took the offering. They made the announcements. He got into preaching. He started preaching his message. And he started preaching his message. 20 minutes into his message, he doesn't know me. He's never seen me before. 20 minutes into his message, he goes, I'm sorry. I can't finish this message. And he got very stirred. And he said, now listen, I don't want a Jonah on this ship. God says you did not come down. The person who he meant did not come down. And I'm going to read this one more time. And by the time I finish reading it, you come down here, and God says, this is your day. I am to anoint you for ministry. And he says, if you do not come down, do not come back to this church.
That is incredible. I'm thinking about Samuel going into the house of Jesse, and all of the sons are calling and saying, no, that's not the one. That's not. There's still another one. You have no
Go
more nowhere. There's no more.
He's out in the field with the sheep. Go
yeah. What? Are you kidding me?
Yes, sir.
Well, listen, man. Of all the people who start, I don't know if anybody have the struggle of the story that you have, and how many times God have to convince you. That's just beyond me. All right. So what did you do now that did you? So what were your wife saying now after you didn't go and now the call is come again? What did she say?
By this time, I had completely melted. I was finished. I was done. I just got up and dragged myself down to the altar. And as soon as my feet entered the aisle, there was an elder in the church. He's now with the Lord, Elder Ephraim Lopez. He stood up. The man was about 400 pounds. My man stood up on the pulpit and said, you're the man. You are the man. And he grabbed me as I came. Come, 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 come. Thus says the Lord.
Wow.
And he prophesies to me what Sister Sarah Brown, my wife's boss, had told me. The Lord says, I see you in a room. I see people sitting all around you, brother. I see you teaching. And I see the joy and the fulfillment on the faces of the people of God. God says, I've called you from the pews to the pulpit, and this is your day. And as God is, I'm just my brother, I'm almost to the point of shaking. Every time I talk about this, I break down and cry. And it was on that day that God plucked me out, and I said, my life is over. That's it. I can't hide anymore. And it has been the foundation of faith and confidence for me to remind me that this is not an accident, that God went through a whole lot to make it clear to me that he wanted me to be where I am, doing what I'm doing, right here in this city, right here in this region of Lower Westchester. Because even that was revealed to me prophetically.
Wow.
So, you know.
Whew. All right. I'm talking to Bishop Reford Mott. This is my friend. This is my fellow laborer. We work together in New Rochelle. We both pastor in New Rochelle. Of course, he has his own ministry that he established, founder of his ministry. So where he goes, his ministry goes, because he's the leader of it. How he decide what happened to his ministry, but is my friend for years, and we have worked together on so many different platforms. My goodness, I don't know where I go from here, man, because your story is not finished. There's a lot to your story. We're gonna have to do part 2. I guarantee you we're gonna have to do part 2, because I don't want to wear you out tonight. But
only if the people say they want part 2, then we'll give them part 2.
Trust me. You're gonna make them type in there for part 2. Well, all right. Since you're pushing them, they'll type it. I guarantee you. All those in agreement that we are part 2, just put it in the box. Let him see it. Part 2 is a must. Okay. All right. So, and by the way, he is the pastor, the founder and lead pastor of Generations Church, right down on Main Street in New Rochelle. On Main Street in New Rochelle. Okay, so the man is on the main street. He's not even on the off street, right? So he's on Main Street. Every town have a main street. He is on Main Street. All right.
And that in itself is a miracle.
we know a little bit about it, up the street and then come back down the street, but still on Main Street, right? We know all of that. Change numbers on Main Street, but still on Main Street. So that is a whole other story. So guess what? We're gonna have to come back. And see that people are going, everybody wanna have part 2. They wanna have part 2. Of course, why not? Your story is amazing, Bishop. Your story is amazing. I could not have imagined what I was going to hear on your story, especially what you told me before we came on live. Especially what you told me before we came on. Oh yeah, you're sure not gonna get those kind of exciting things about. Are you kidding me?
To God be the glory, man. I'm grateful if anyone got anything out of my story. I will confess that. When I tell my story, I realize how much God has done for me. And
that's my friend Denise Wisdom down in New Jersey over there. Yeah, go ahead, man. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it just bolsters my faith every time I share my story, because it reminds me of some of the things that should not have happened in my life, but were it not for God. And I don't just say that. Literally, God did the impossible to get me to where I am today. And I'm just grateful for him being so faithful along the way, not only speaking to me personally, but even allowing people to speak to me things that he'd already told me word for word, just to let me know, you think I don't see you? I see you. I love the way he deals with my life, so it's a blessing.
Bishop Reford Mott is a community voice. He's a community voice in New Rochelle. As I say, everywhere you go, you ask about Reford Mott, they know him because he's a community voice. He looks out for the people in the community, do events for the community. He made himself known in the community. As a matter of fact, we both serve on the and the
clergy rapid response.
the New Rochelle Police Clergy Rapid Response Team. So we both serve on that team together. All right. So we are partners, not only in ministry, but partnering in how we look out for our community, that they can call on us at times of need. He gets more call than I do because he lives in the immediate city, but but we are workers together. I am so excited to have you tonight, man. I am in awe. Just let you know, I am in awe of your story and your journey. I am in awe of your story and your journey. And by the way, a lot of the things that you talked about, I could say me too, teacher, because we've had so many of those similar experiences. I could identify you, say, walk back when you come in the house. I know. I know that story. I know that. Yeah, listen, me man. As you talk about that, as you talked about it, I was thinking, the thing about the profoundness about an experience is that when skeptics want to make you think that is not real, they can't make you deny what you actually experience. They can't tell you an experience is not real, because that's something that you conjure up in your mind and try to, you just said, come on, man, you know what Jesus said, we speak of what we know and we testify of what we have seen. So you can't tell me about my story.
I will tell you this, as you brought that up, and I know you're winding things down. You make me value my story even more, just by you allowing me to tell it again tonight. It reminded me, last year I was in Lebanon in the Middle East, and I was at the home of one of the wealthiest people there, very, very wealthy international businessman that had a beautiful home up in the hills overlooking the city of Beirut. And we were just talking, and for some reason it was myself and about 4 other pastors that was on the team with me. And we were having coffee and sitting around the pool and talking. And for some reason, the man said to me, "Tell me your story. How did you get to be a believer and to be a pastor, and why you're doing these things? Why do you?" And I'm like, "What?" Man, and I started to unpack my story to this man, and he looked at me, says, "Wow, these things really happened to you?" I said, "Absolutely." Without question. He says, "We must talk again, but you really give me something to think about." And it just reminds me of to say to any of you that may be watching, whatever your story is, it may not be as my story, but your story is a story that can impact someone's life. And you and I have a responsibility to learn how to tell that story in such a way that it makes sense. It can move someone closer to the Lord. You may not be the one that brings them all the way in, but your story can be a seed that gets somebody's journey started towards thinking about God. And I think that even if we don't learn the Bible, we don't get to go to Bible school or seminary or get any degrees, I think one thing you have responsibility for, and that is your story. And if you have nothing else, you have your story. And make sure that you know your story, you learn how to tell it, and you tell it well. Because people are more captivated by a story, a narrative, something that's true and real for you, than something abstract that you're talking about that you may not be as connected to. But your story is your story, and no one can change your story or take that from you. So I just wanted to leave that with you guys tonight.
Every one of us story and every person's story is unique. You know what? I don't want to miss before I let you go. I didn't realize. Did I know you have 5 kids?
Yes, 5 children.
Did I know you have 5 kids? I don't know if I knew you had 5 kids.
Oh, I don't know how you didn't know that.
I don't know if I knew you had 5
kids so many times.
I don't know if I know you had 5 kids. I don't know. Maybe I lost something. But then I'm looking at that. Not only that you got 5 kids, but you got 14 grandchildren.
Yes, 14
man,
grandchildren.
You made me look like I'm not even trying, man.
Well, my kids are doing the rest of it,
Your kids are doing great, man. How many daughters you got?
I have 3 gorgeous daughters.
Okay.
2 of which are married. The eldest one works with us here in the ministry. The others live in the South. They're married. And I have two sons, one of which works with me here in the ministry. The other one lives in Florida.
Well, I know Josiah for sure. And maybe one or two, maybe I know three. I'm not sure if maybe I heard about, but maybe never met them. So maybe that's why I didn't appeal to me.
You remember my younger daughter because she used to work here before
Right.
she got married and moved
Right.
away. But you remember Liz.
Right, I remember her for sure. Yeah. This is a relationship builder. This man started. Give me a little bit of synopsis, and while we wrap it up, give me a little bit of synopsis on the remnant pastor thing that you started. And I think COVID knocked us out of that. We used to meet regularly, and COVID just kind of destroy that remnant pastor thing. Give me a little bit of insight on what.
Years ago, I read a book by a guy named H.B. Linden. He used to be the right-hand man, I think, on Focus on the Family with Dr. James Dobson. H.B. Linden was a pastor himself, and he wrote a book called Pastors at Risk. And in that book, he outlined how difficult the life of a pastor is. And one of the things he outlined was that many pastors didn't have friends. And there's something about that struck me. And I began from that point to try to build friendships with pastors, bring pastors together, because I felt that was a need in the body of Christ. You know, here you are, a great man in my city. I would not have known you. I would not have had a friendship with you. We would not have an opportunity to have this moment were it not for that fact that I was driven to reach out and build relationships with and connect with the pastors in my city. And that's my heart. It's something that it's natural to me. It's not costly to do it. Someone said when something is your nature, it doesn't cost you to do it. And so I love pastors. I love their families. I feel like if I invest anything, whether it's just my friendship in a pastor's life, that I think I make a huge difference. I believe the message that when pastors have friendships and have people they trust that they can talk to and they can be honest with, it makes them emotionally healthier. Right. And I think that, so I started the Remnant really to do that, among other things. It is also a place where we teach and develop and teach leadership and exchange ideas, best practices in ministry. But more than that, the byproduct of it is really that we end up becoming friends. We end up trusting each other. Why? Because we're supposed to walk together and work together as pastors in the region. And that's across denominational lines. I believe there's one church in the city. There are many congregations, but Jesus has one church. So I don't respect the denominational lines. I am a relational person, and so relationship cuts across all of that. And so the Remnant, we had that going. I started that in 2007 and went strong for several years. And, right around COVID, things got really, sort of, discontinued. But we who have built relationships through the years, the pastors, we still get together, we still hang out, we have coffee, we hang out, and we're still, and that's the end game anyway, that we have this trust and we have this relationship where we're doing life together. And that's at the end of the day, that's what Jesus wants. When he looks down and he looks at New Rochelle and he sees the condition of the church because the pastors are not in competition, but they're friends and they love each other and they got each other's back, blessing comes to this city because of it. So that's really the goal of the Remnant, and that's a little bit of what we do. Work is not over, but that's a little bit of synopsis of what it's about and what we do.
My goodness, man, I could talk to you. I could talk to you all night, not just because I know you, and not because you're my friend, but because your story is so fascinating, and it's like, okay, we want to get more of it. It's more of your story. I am talking to Bishop Reford Mott, and I guarantee, well, I can't guarantee anything, but I'm hoping that he will come back, and we're gonna pick up on it because he has so much to offer in his community outreach. What drives him in the community? What's the driving force behind the relationship? We hear that about the pastors thing because he wanted to build a community and a camaraderie with pastors where we can feel comfortable to communicate and relate to each other. And religion didn't play a factor, because when we look at it, almost every one of us are from one different, group setting of religious beliefs and persuasions and doctrine. But the friendship and the fellowship, we are so bonded together that it would hard to identify that we were different in terms of organization for the structure. You say, the body of Christ is one thing, although we come with a different label, and we have lived that. We have lived that, and
Amen.
and that never caused a barrier or a kind of reservist, standoffish kind of thing. We just like run into it with each other, just like we don't care.
Absolutely.
We come on without labels. We have no labels. We just like, okay, we are brothers in Christ, and this is just an amazing man in the community of New Rochelle and surrounding areas, and we're just getting started with the conversation. I can't wait to have you coming back and we chat again. Please extend my love to your wife, Pastor Cherie, and just let her know that I can't wait for the next time that we hear her side of the story, because you kind of just let her know that you refuse to give us the depth of it, and maybe she will give me the depth of it one of these days.
All right. You let me know, and we'll see when we can get together again and do this. And it's been a pleasure for me to be with you, and thank you, because I leave here full of faith and encouragement just from sharing my story, and again just realizing the depth of God's love and care for me, and how He just picked me up and pushed me through to where I am today. It's all for His glory, and I don't just say that because it sounds right. It is a fact. It's really all about God. I always tell people I'm like the guy trying to play dominoes, but I'm new at the game, and I don't know how to read the game like the high level players, and I'm sitting there with a good hand, right? And God is the one on my shoulder tapping me and say,
Play that, right?
Play that one right here. See? You don't know nothing. You go on, me show you. Play that one there. That's me. And that's, I take no credit. It's all God.
Play that one there. I say, I drop a 6 love, but boy, trust me, I can tell you how I did it, right?
Block the game, I don't even know how you did it.
Now we call her blind black, right? Oh my God. I'm talking to my friend and I'm just excited. My friend, listen, and here's my thought, my closing thought on that. You never know. And there's a reason why I thought of you, and there's a reason why you responded in the manner you responded. There's a reason why we are here tonight. To hear your story. And here's the good thing about your story. We're streaming it on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. That means it is not going to die. It's not going to die. It's not going to be unavailable. And everybody can share this and can go back and listen to it again and relive it and just see how the amazing journey that this man had and what it took for God to bring him to where he is now in ministry, and how he has been influenced, and so that he can now become an influence to others, putting himself in their position. And just incredible. This is just a great conversation. I never thought I was going to hear all that I heard, and I am so appreciative. Thank you, man, for joining me. Thank you, friends, for watching. Thank you for sticking with us. I can know you enjoy the conversation. When you see all the reaction and people are crying out for, let's make sure, please do part 2. I promise you, I'm going to get Bishop Mott back on. He's gonna get himself occupied on Wednesday nights coming up in September, but we're gonna squeeze him out somewhere. We're gonna squeeze him out one evening and get back, and we're gonna continue the conversation, because there's so much more that we haven't talked about. All right, my friends, I look forward to seeing you next time on Let's Talk with the Doc. I hope that you follow me on Facebook and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you TikTok, look for ORB Ministries, because we're taking it everywhere. All right. There's a big program coming up. Hang in here, Bishop. There's a big program coming up this weekend in the Bronx, and the Bahamas Brass Band is coming to the Bronx. Hang in there with me, Bishop. The Bahamas Brass Band is coming to the Bronx this weekend.
Now give me a J, give me a E, give me a S, give me a U, give me a S. What does that stand? Oh, will of my Lord is me. Now give me a J.
Oh, they cut it off. It cuts off. I didn't know that why it cut off like that. Okay, so my friends, thank you again for joining me, and I hope to see you the next time on Let's Talk with the Doc. I thank the Bishop for joining. What's your last word, Bishop? I know you give me your close, but what's your last word as we wrap this up?
Well, I think, as I just said, just before, just to reiterate, your story is God's glory. So, master the art of telling your story.
And boy, did you do that tonight? You
Well,
master
with
the
your
art of
help.
telling it. Well, a lot of people come on my program and say, you're coming up and say, oh man, you let me talk more than what I plan on talking. So
This is also true.
so many people say you made me talk more than what I plan on talking, because it's so we try to set the atmosphere so comfortable and so relatable that people just feel free to talk your story and be a blessing to others, man. God bless you so much. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next week, next time on Let's Talk with the Doc. And let me just say, my friends, I have my book. I revised my book. This is my last thing I'm going to say. I revised my book, and here is the revised. Did the Bishop go? We lost him?
I'm here.
Why did I lose you?
I just had to pack something away.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gone behind the scenes, man.
Yeah.
So listen, I revised my book, and by the way, I put another chapter in this what you didn't have in the one that you got, right? I put a chapter in this one about the glory shall return to the church, because everybody's kind of worried about the church and where the church is going to be, and I think Jesus promised that he's going to present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle. So I say, just the church is in good hand, because Jesus still retained the headship of the church. So I revised it, just published it last month, just July. So it's available. There's a QR code, my friend. You can get a copy. Check out Facebook, check out Twitter, check out TikTok. You'll find the QR code. You can get that copy of the revised edition from the QR code. I'll see you next week. God's blessings. Bishop will go off. We'll go off like we came on. So let me close out, and then we'll say goodbye offline. All right. Blessings to you, my friends. See you next week. Well, thank you for checking in on ORB Ministries. I trust that you will share with your friends, subscribe, hit the bell for notification, and stay tuned, because you never know what's next or who will join the conversation.